Ryan, as we sit here today, our listeners may not really chime in on this in any great degree, but there is always this little tug of war going on between the economy and the Fed. The Fed doesn't want the economy to be too hot, but they don't want it to be too cold either. So just recently, Janet Yellen said that, with inflation and the bond market interest rates moving upward, she said that we may have to raise interest rates sooner than later in order to slow down the economy. That gives chills to somebody who's an equity investor like myself. I'm not real sure I want the Fed jumping into the middle of the party right now. What do you think?
Oh, you're right. And that's the big thing, right? Because if we start to see more, the thing that people say is the Fed behind the eight ball? What I mean by that is if inflation starts to creep up, the Fed has said inflation is transitory. It's one of those weird words you don't use unless you're studying for the SAT. Transitory just means a near-term blip, then you're going to get back to trend. So the Fed is saying, kind of what I just said about inflation, it's a near-term problem, but it's not a long-term problem. So the Fed is not going to hike rates. If the Fed's behind the eight ball, and inflation does become more of a problem, like a lot of others, really smart, Larry Summers, for instance, really smart guy. There's some smart people that are saying it's going to become an issue. You're behind the eight ball. Then the Fed has to hike rates just that much sooner. Now, the Fed has been very clear. They're not going to hike rates probably until like 2023 or even 2024. 2 Tuesdays ago, I think it was with The Atlantic. Janet Yellen doing a webinar, kind of like we're doing right now, and she kind of implied maybe we're going to have to hike rates sooner. Market didn't like that. Market had a big sell-off. By 4 o'clock that day, she does a webinar with Wall Street Journal, and she walked it back. My personal opinion is she's kind of saying what she's thinking in that, listen, you're probably going to hike rates sooner than 2023 or 2024. After last week's inflation data, euro dollar futures, getting a little geeky, but it's kind of what people are betting on. 80% chance of at least one Fed rate hike in 2022, and it would be later in 2022. But that's kind of where we are, and there are people digging their heels in, John, on each side of this. It's going to be a fascinating story and result if we have massive inflation or if we don't, and who was right and who was wrong. But Janet Yellen, when she said that, markets reacted and they sold off. So that tells you what the market is thinking there.
Want more content like this delivered to your inbox weekly? Visit fastest4.com to learn more.